You're listening to Remotely One, a podcast that educates, entertains, and inspires you to take your life back from the office commute. I'm Rick, a former beer rep who left the warehouse to become a voice actor and digital creator.
And I'm Kaleem, a remote work advocate and consultant. We're going to speak with some of the top professionals who have managed to avoid the commute as they share stories from the most inspiring to the most comical, all while working remotely.
Man, this sounds awesome. Let's clock in.
I like to listen to 80s music to cheer me up.
What kind of 80s music?
Cheesy 80s music.
What, like Culture Club or Air Supply?
Like Boy George and
Here we go.
Like okay. Yeah.
Come a chameleon.
You ready, man? Well, let's go. Come on, Manuel. Come on, Manuel. Yeah. Yes, we gotta go. So, what else? Give me another person that you like.
What about Lionel Richie?
Oh my God. Ooh. Hello. Is it me you're looking for?
Exactly.
I can see it in your eyes.
See? We're all cheesy.
You're gonna do
nothing wrong with
karaoke in this show.
You came to the right show today, my friend.
I might regret it in the future, but it will be fun.
There are no regrets. Only lessons. Welcome back, everybody, to Remotely One. I am your co-host, Rick Haney, joined by my well-prepared and moisturized colleague, Kaleem Clarkson.
Yes. Nice to see you, bro. You're looking good with those glasses, man. You got the hat on.
I feel accomplished. You know, we're going places today.
You're the voice of remote work.
Yes. We got a guest that's going to put us in our place, and he's going to inform us of a thing or two, maybe.
A couple things, right? I think.
Maybe not.
Yeah. Okay, no, I'm confident. I'm looking forward to this. But before we get to that, listeners, viewers, since you know how to find us, do us a huge favor. Go to ratethispodcast.com/remotely1 and just leave us a review. Again, ratethispodcast.com/remotely1. And if you could do that for us, we would be ever so thankful. Since 2015, Remotely One is one of the largest communities of remote work professionals with over 3,000 Slack members and 5,000 email subscribers. That's pretty big. We're getting there.
Let's go.
Hey, you know what? It's free to join, so go check it out at remotely1.com. And with that out of the way, Kaleem, my brother, give us a tease or two about today's guest.
Oh, my brother from another mother, baby. There you are. Uh-huh. There you are, my boy Ricky. My boy Ricky Rick. We'll talk about that story a little later. But today, sir, our guests, they're originally from Lisbon, Portugal. Okay? Now, for some of y'all that don't know, I think Running Remote is going to be in Lisbon. So, you got to check it out. Rick, our guests today, they currently reside in Madrid, Spain. Just beauty. I feel like this person just loves beauty, Rick.
Yes.
Damn it.
I can appreciate that.
Yes. They're over there pimping. Look at them. Just chilling.
Yeah.
Oh. Always, sir, our guests know a few things.
Uh-huh.
They've been taught teachings.
Yes.
They know learnings and they know
learning lessons.
Yes, they do. Today, our guests, they earned their master's degree in computer science from this tiny little school called Carnegie Mellon.
Carnegie Mellon.
Yeah.
That's a big old think tank.
Yeah, no big deal. Just look it up. If you don't know it, look it up. All right.
Yep.
Let's see. Oh, Rick, I think our guest has a lot in common with your cheesy ass. You know what I mean?
Say what, man?
You heard me. Our guests, they love cheesy 80s music just like you.
Oh, man, I thought you were going to come at me with something threatening.
Just like you, sir. He has a poster of Boy George and Lionel Richie still in his room.
Do you really want to hurt me? Do you really want to make me cry?
Ooh. Everyone does it. Everyone loves it.
You know you do too.
I do too. I can't hate. Our guest is the former editor for InfoQ, which is one of the largest technology conferences and websites in the world. And they've had people from every company you can think of, Rick. Netflix,
Yeah.
Google, Amazon, everyone has been on that show. So it's a big deal. Rick, our guests today, they are the co-author of a book called Team Topologies.
Oh, it's big time.
Yeah. Listeners and viewers, please give a warm welcome to Manuel Pais. Let's go. Woo.
Welcome to the show, Manuel.
Holy hell.
Thank you so much.
Settle down. You're going crazy.
Is that not the most amazing introduction you have ever had?
Yes, except the part about the posters in the bedroom, but all the rest is accurate, okay? And it's the most vibrant introduction ever had. There will never be another one like this.
Never.
No.
Manuel, you tell me you don't have the posters of Boy George and Lionel Richie in your room still?
That is confidential. That is something I cannot.
We're getting into sharky waters here, Kaleem.
He was told in confidence. I broke his confidentiality.
The important thing is you gotta give credit to the 80s music.
Yeah.
It is
Took
true.
me a while, but I have to give it credit.
I mean, we all crack jokes.
We ask only the important questions here on Remotely One. Asking the important questions.
It's true. It's true.
So getting into it head first, Manuel. First of all, thank you for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure to be talking with you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. You have an incredibly impressive technical background and a very clear passion for leadership. Was there ever a specific moment or incident maybe that inspired you to combine those two elements?
Yes, I have the, like you said, kind of technical computer science background, and I've done more like technical work for several years, beginning of my career, and then when I got into consulting role, first time you see kind of problems which are much more about the relationships between people and teams, you kind of think, oh yeah, maybe it's in this organization or something is wrong or not going well. But then you start to see the repetition of these patterns. Oh yeah, people don't talk to each other, or people don't know who can help them, or they have incentives that are leading them to act in ways that are actually not helpful for other teams and for the organization. So he had a lot of those moments back in 2015, 2016, when I was doing a lot of consulting around stuff like DevOps and more technical. But at the end was always coming up was, okay, I like the technical part, but when I look at it, there's a lot of problems that are really not technical that have a really huge impact on even how people then, how motivated they feel to go to work, how engaged, and how, that then manifests in the quality of what they do, right? But especially for the individual, that you don't get people motivated and engaged if we don't address a lot of these issues around interactions and responsibilities, etc.
Yeah, the things that technology can't always answer for. You got to address the human-to-human elements.
Still humans behind technology, yeah.
What I love too is your background is engineering and development, and so many times there's kind of like this stigma that developers are all, introverts and don't want to talk to each other, and you're just sitting in this cave in your underwear coding away in the dark. It's not true. I mean, like, some of it's true, but it's not all true. Like, we're humans too. I'm a former engineer. It's like a lot of times you can't write your best code if you're in conflict with somebody else. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, you're having this conflict over a solution, right? And there's no collaboration there. Your code can be impacted by it. So I'm happy that you were able to take that position.
I agree. And often I think that kind of leads to situations where people are working in a silo, in the sense of, well, because they are developers or engineers that are very technical, let them just do their little thing. But in today's world, especially when things are more and more complex, if you think about the services you use, things you use on your day-to-day basis, Netflix, Spotify, Amazon, this stuff, is pretty complex and has a lot of dependencies internally as well as externally. And so we cannot try to put people in just their boxes, which usually are the teams they belong to, and say, well, you just do your little part and let us, someone else worry about connecting the dots. That's kind of one of the things that we talk about in team topologies that doesn't work. Like I was saying, even from a motivational perspective, it's known that people have some sort of intrinsic motivators, and it might vary a little bit from person to person, but almost everyone that works in kind of knowledge intensive work wants to have autonomy to make decisions for their work. They want to have a purpose, a sense of purpose. Why are we doing this? Why does this kind of bring me, or should bring me, joy if I have that clarity? And a bit of mastery as well, like that I'm good or I'm getting better at what I do. And that all those things bring internal motivation, right? And the financial part and benefits, it needs to be there, so it's not something that you worry about. But if you think on a day-to-day basis, maybe in your engineering experience, Kaleem, you probably might remember some situations where you might have really good, benefits or have a good job, but then you don't necessarily feel motivated because you cannot make decisions, or because you have 10, 20 different people asking you for stuff and you have no way to prioritize, and or you depend on other teams to do stuff for you to be able to make progress, and you have no control about when are those things going to be done. So all these problems actually end up causing people to not feel engaged or not feel motivated for day-to-day work. So we need to address those as well.
Manuel, can we go back a little bit, into your career and talk a little bit about you being the lead editor at InfoQ? When I saw that, I was like, holy smokes, it's one of the world's largest technology conferences. I was fortunate to present at one of the InfoQs, which was really cool. Can you just tell us about, how did you get the job? Like, what interested you to join that organization? Damn it, I'm going to do a follow-up. And then can you just tell us what your role was there and what that experience was like?
Yeah, for sure. So I started InfoQ as, let's say, an editor. I was writing news. I was reviewing articles or asking people to contribute articles. People like you and other people have interesting stuff to say about, let's say, technology in general. I was within the DevOps area, right? Then eventually I became the lead editor, which just meant that I would help train new editors that were joining and sort of have a bit more coordination responsibilities. But it's quite an interesting organization. So InfoQ is the website, and then they organize the QCon conferences across the world. Mm-hmm. I learned a lot from that experience. And what struck me was, at the time I joined, I had a technical career and I was doing well, but nobody knew who the hell is Manuel Pais. And I would reach out to people who are sort of seen as, and they are super clever people and sort of luminaries in the technology field. If you think about people like, for those familiar with Martin Fowler or Dan North or Jez Humble, people who have wrote really influential books as well, they would all be, maybe there was one exception or something. Otherwise, they would all be welcome and they would be open to share and explain or contribute stuff. So that was the biggest thing I took from that, and try to then bring that into my current role, where obviously I have more visibility, if you like, and some people reach out, and try to be always open and sort of kind of pay forward. Like, if those people who surely were super busy and had no obligation to reply to this guy who sent them a random email from InfoQ, and they took the time, like, to try to be available also for whoever reaches out to me with questions about the book, or even sometimes about how can I become a book author, how can I change my career. And yeah, that was the biggest thing. It was a very, very interesting experience, and just growing also my network of connections in the industry and getting to know really clever people was awesome.
Yeah, so Manuel, this is your chance. Who was the biggest asshole? Put him on blast right now, Manuel. Who responded? Who was just such a jerk? Please tell me it was like, I don't know, somebody huge, Come on. Give me a Zuck or Elon just told you off in an email. Don't do that. I don't want you to really spill.
No, I'm not going there. But really, that was really almost, I can't even remember. I think maybe there was one situation of not replying is not even being like.
Yeah, not replying is no big. The ghosting is whatever.
It's okay. Yeah, people are busy. Okay. That was sort of my expectation that a lot of these people would not reply. That was the thing, and then people would be super friendly and reply and try to help, and like, whoa, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Until Zuck told you to go F yourself. I totally get it. I remember.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You just touched on something that really piqued my curiosity, and that was about becoming an author. Talk to me a little bit about that discovery process and what it was like to become or decide that you wanted to become an author.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think sometimes people who want to become a book author, and if they ask me for advice, my first question is, why do you want to become a book author? Because there can be many different reasons. And in fact, for me and my co-author, Matthew Skelton, or I should speak for myself at least, the first reason was, let's get what we've seen and what we've discovered in our work into a book, because that's a really good means for people to learn about it. And we didn't even have any kind of big expectations on how many copies it would sell or what audience it would reach. It was just like, this is going to be easier if we have a book that we can give to our customers to kind of explain a bit our thinking, because the things we discussed before, right? Technology is not going to solve a lot of these issues with interactions and kind of boundaries of responsibility and stuff like that. So having a book is going to be very helpful. Obviously, we wanted it to be successful, and it's been way more than we expected. But, there can be different reasons to be an author, because you want to just condense your knowledge in a way that's easy to communicate, or it can be that you want to become known and grow your career that way, which is also fine. So for me, it was a bit like that. Obviously, all the work at InfoQ helped shape my writing as well. Obviously, I'm not a native English speaker. Not just the language itself, becoming more proficient, but also thinking about how do you communicate to your audience. Like, understand the audience, understand what is the most important thing for them. How do you get that message across quickly in a way that they can digest, and then you expand that into the book, right, in this case. So that was a bit my process, and I know other people have different kind of process. For me, it was like a bit of a growth that I had not anticipated, but that was actually what happened with writing for InfoQ, and then starting to also do more kind of communication with conference talks and stuff like that. And that helped kind of shape my, let's say, communication skills to be able to write a book. And then we had a lot of help from the publisher as well. It's called IT Revolution, and it's a small publisher, so they really put in a lot of effort for each book to make sure it's as good as possible. And they helped us also kind of with the narrative of the book and make sure it was telling a story, right? Not just here are all the ideas, but actually how do you tell them?
Yeah, so in terms of narrative, it seems to me that these days, everyone and his brother involved in this industry has written a book about discovering new ways for their remote teams to more effectively interact. But you kind of took a different approach.
We did too.
Yeah.
We wrote the workbook.
More specifically, though, your approach is about separate teams and getting them to interact so that the ripples don't become waves in terms of delay delivery on certain things that need to be done on time, increased wait times between teams or whatever. What are the biggest challenges in your research that you found were facing the separate teams who are collaborating remotely?
That's a good point. When the COVID happened and everyone was suddenly working remotely, we had published the book, Team Topologies, just a few months before. So it started to gain a bit of traction. And it started as, okay, what can we do to help around, all these companies moving to work remotely? Obviously, the initial stage was kind of how do we get people to have access that they only had in the office before, and kind of the more practical stuff. And then that kind of like the next stage was for individual teams to learn how to work in this new environment, right? So within a single team, they can decide, well, are we going to be, some teams do virtual office where they're, with cameras all day long so they can quickly talk to each other or see each other. Other teams decide to do other ways of working together remotely, right? And because you're in the same team, you figure that out fairly soon. But then what we saw was that it was becoming more difficult for the work that crosses different teams, right? And if you think about it, actually, in the office work before, when most people were working in the office, it's not that the problems weren't there. It was just kind of the office was in a way hiding problems in terms of interactions between teams and boundaries, because you had faster access to those people. You had sometimes accidental access to people in other teams when you meet by the water cooler, stuff like that. But fundamentally, we were not addressing problems that already existed. Like we were talking earlier, teams don't know who they have to reach out to. Teams don't know who is responsible for what. And we need to get stuff done and we don't know who to talk to, or we know who to talk to, but it's going to take, 3 times the time we have to get it delivered. All these kind of issues were not new because we went to remote. Often they were slightly covered by the fact that we're in the same office. So these things sometimes would arise kind of accidentally. So now when we're remote, that kind of was not happening anymore. And so those problems start to intensify. And in my opinion, part of the backlash that has been, I guess, in the last months, maybe the last year around remote work, put aside the questions of if it's about the office real estate and all that stuff, I think has to do partially with this kind of problematics that trying to work in the same way with the remote aspect is not just about having the proper tools and the virtual chats and all that. It's about those problems of interactions between different teams became sort of aggravated because they're not being dealt with unless you are intentionally dealing with that. And that's why we wrote the workbook on remote team interactions, this one, because we wanted to base the ideas of the original book, Team Topologies. What are specific things that are even more important in a remote environment? And here are some simple techniques and templates that can help you do this stuff. So I'm talking about stuff like, tracking your dependencies to other teams. Which dependencies should we address because they are problematic and which ones might be okay? How do you make it clear as a team how others should communicate with you? Where is your kind of information about whatever, your KPIs, your metrics, your way of working? Make that visible to others in the organization, especially in this remote environment. And how to make interactions more purposeful, easier to discover. How do we discover what other teams exist now that we don't even see other people's faces on a regular basis, right? So that was kind of the genesis of the workbook. We started talking about this stuff shortly after the pandemic, and then eventually it became this workbook.
As you're just talking about each team being able to know what the other team's working on, to me it sounds like a lot of the interaction is about transparency and knowledge sharing. Am I hearing that correctly? Because before, what you're saying is a lot of times what happens is that one team will just start hammering away at something in a silo, especially in engineering, right? You have the front end team over there is just crushing on something, and then the back end team over here is like, oh wait, that's going to impact something. Where are you seeing the challenges when it comes to this type of transparency? Are people buying into this, or are you feeling like that's a real big lift for you when you're diagnosing a problem, you're like, okay, well, this could fix it. What is that looking like when people are reaching out to you?
Yeah, it takes time. Some teams will be more sort of aware of this kind of problem. Why is this a problem in the first place? Why do we need to be more transparent or more explicit or intentional about how we interact with others and how we make information available to others? In general, what tends to happen, you might have some teams that are more in tune to these kind of problems. They'll start doing things a bit differently. And then other teams start to pick up because they start to see, oh, okay, I can see how this would help us if we adopted a similar approach, right? But I think you're spot on, right? It's a question of being more transparent, more clear, having more purpose on the way we interact with others, especially outside our team. At least in engineering, that has not been a focus in the past. And some teams are also like, oh, does this mean that I have to create more documents because I don't want to do that? Right. And so you need to find a balance between you're trying to kind of push people to, or push in a good way, or nudge, I should say, teams to consider that there are these problematics that are causing, impact on other teams, but at the same time also not forcing people to do stuff that they don't understand the value yet, right? You just kind of nudge and sometimes you wait and allow people to sort of reach those conclusions by themselves. And so it's the work that there's no tool that's going to do it for you, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah.
And you need sometimes patience.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of digging a little bit deeper into that, as these separated teams their relationships start to evolve, obviously they're setting goals and they're learning new things all the time. How does goal setting and the discovery of new things complement one another in that process? Yeah.
So there's an interesting aspect here, and I'm not answering your question directly yet, but thinking about, it's related, okay? I'll get there. Yeah. But thinking about kind of the where we are now in end of 2023, where a lot of people are working remotely, but then you also have some backlash of some companies that want people to go back to the office. And it's clear, I mean, the data shows that a lot of people, and you've had guests in the podcast like Nick Bloom, I think we're talking about this as well, like most people want to have a good balance and they need several days that they want to work remotely. But from the perspective of the organization, right, where you need to have goals and you want teams and people to be aligned to the goals of the organization, I think there's an opportunity to sort of rethink this hybrid work, right? When should we be in the office? What should we try to achieve when we are in the office together? And maybe, coming back to the question, that's maybe where it makes sense to people are together to align on their goals and to share, what they're doing and how does that align to the goal of the company. Because what I see sometimes, we're talking about remote work versus in the office work as if we should always be doing the same type of work. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
It's just a matter of location. And I think that kind of misses the point a bit. It's a matter of purpose. Why should we be in the office together? Well, one of the things that would make sense to me is let's be, so we can be more aligned on the goals and how we're getting to those goals. That probably makes sense as, face to face, because you're able to get into deeper discussions perhaps. And what makes sense to do remotely, or at least offer the choice. Like if you're doing your day-to-day work in your team, maybe you're building some cool new service or whatever, or you work in finance or whatever, on your day-to-day work, maybe it doesn't matter because we have the data that shows actually people can be more productive working remotely because they don't have to commute and they have more flexibility on schedule, etc. So I think that's an opportunity to think about what is the purpose and when should we work, when should we be together in the office or in some kind of retreat or something, right? Because the other aspect that is important is to build trust between people, especially in the same team. And it's kind of funny to start hearing stories of people who joined the company remotely, they never met anyone face to face from that company, and they already left that company. It's kind of crazy, right? Thinking that can happen. Yeah. I've heard.
Yeah, I've never once thought of that. I've never once even thought of that. Like, yeah, you could literally go into a company, work for whatever, and then leave and have never met any of the humans in person, which is
That's crazy.
Weird. It's a little weird.
It's the future.
It is kind of the future. I got a question because, like, we are attempting to get more international guests on the show. We have been a little U.S. centric, and but we had a good amount of international guests. I always love hearing the perspectives of what are the views like outside of the U.S. So, as far as workplace flexibility in general, I'm going to ask you a two-part question again. Damn it. So where are you seeing workplace flexibility? Like, what is it looking like in your home country of Portugal? And then also where you are now, what is the attitude towards it right now when it comes to workplace flexibility? And then the follow-up piece to that is, where do you think this is all heading?
Those are good questions. So I think here in Europe, where I can give you some, and I should say Southern Europe, because I guess in the US you're able to see the trends more country level, but I mean, maybe people, I don't know. My wife is from the US, so I shouldn't say anything bad, but maybe sometimes people in the US think of Europe as one thing, Europe, and it's like,
right.
Even Portugal and Spain have differences. And so it's very much country based, I would say. At the country level, you can kind of see some trends. But basically, I think my perspective, especially Portugal and Spain, is you have the more established companies, the larger companies that have been around for a longer time, where many of them are sort of halfway between pre-pandemic. Working from home was sort of a perk. Okay, maybe you can do 1 day per week or less than that, and it's sort of a special benefit. And then you had the pandemic times where everyone was remote, and some bigger companies are trying to push towards kind of pre-pandemic, like it's just a perk, and we let you. It's kind of like we give you permission to do stuff, to work a bit more from home, but then you have all the kind of startup and scale up kind of world, which is quite big, I would say, at least compared to the size of the country in Portugal. So in Lisbon and Porto, the main cities, there is a lot of startup scene and scale up as well. And those companies are mostly remotely. So there's all sorts of things. And then you have companies sort of in the middle that also are mostly remote. They're kind of mixed, but you do see big companies where they kind of went back to closer to pre-pandemic, not exactly the same.
Yeah, sounds like it's a similar vibe. You have the younger companies. We're going to have Rob Sato on the show from the Flex Index, and he was just talking about, the companies that were pre-1990, they have less percentage of flexibility than the companies that were created after 2010, right? So it seems like that this is I try not to use the U.S. as like the model of what's going on globally, but the more people we talk, I feel like that this is something that the globe is having a common thread. So thanks.
Probably that makes sense, right? Because it's something that I would say is more influenced by the size of the organization and the age, let's say, of the organization, right? When were they established? And it's kind of normal in a way, or expectable, because there's a lot of ingrained ways of working and thinking about how work is done. That takes time to change. And so now we're in the phase where maybe a lot of people in that situation are looking at the pandemic as like a sort of accident, and they're trying to get closer to how it was before. It's never going to be exactly the same, and again, seeing the remote as sort of a perk, and that's where, like I was saying earlier, I think when you do that, you're missing the opportunity of rethinking the purpose of work and the purpose of, it's not just a matter of location. That's important as well, because remote helps with individual happiness. It helps the climate, which is something we should all be concerned with.
We probably should think about the climate.
Have you heard something about that? Maybe something about climate crisis, making light of a serious issue. But yeah, and so you can use both, but be more intentional about why and what do we need to have in place if we're doing it remotely, which is why we wrote the workbook, and we also have a video-based course about that. That's kind of my main thing, is try to raise these questions, like take a deeper thought about the opportunities also of different modes of working, right? It's not just remote is good or not remote is bad. It's a lot more nuanced than that.
Oh, without question, without question. We are almost out of time, Manuel, but before we get there, I've got to ask you if you'd be willing to share a comical or inspiring moment you may have had while working remotely.
Oh,
For sure. I'm thinking of, it's sort of a tragic comical. So you tell me afterwards if you think it's more tragic or more comedy. It's a situation I had. I've been working remotely well before the pandemic. But actually after, so we published the book, and then we started doing training. At first it was on site, and then obviously quickly everything changed online. And so we get a fair number of people or companies that want training for their employees, right? And what happens, and you can clearly see the difference between sort of a public training where people self-enroll and self-select to join, versus organizations where sometimes you have people who have been sort of invited between quotes, meaning you have to be there for this training. Mm-hmm. And so what happened specifically was one of these sessions, I'm doing the session. It's actually kind of tiring, right? Because you have to be communicating properly, and then we're using some tools. I don't know if you heard about a tool called Miro. It's basically a online board to do exercises, and we're looking at slides. So actually, from my perspective as a instructor, is kind of resource consuming. And we're using Zoom, I think was at the time, and we have the chat, right? Which is usually for people talk with a group. And then I started getting individual messages from someone participating, and he was just going on about how he didn't want to be there. I don't care about any of this shit. He didn't say it like that. This is not meaningful for my work, right? I've just been told that I had to be here. And I'm like, with all the... At the same time, my brain was like exploding, right? I'm talking, or I'm like coordinating exercise and stuff, and trying to reply to this guy. And like, what do I tell him? Like, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I didn't force you to attend. And I didn't really know what to say. Like, at the same time, I felt sorry for the guy because I wouldn't want to be in his position. But at the other time, like, you should feel sorry for me as well if I have to reply.
Put yourself in my shoes.
So I don't know. I know it was okay for him to kind of vent his frustration. It was just like, there's not really much I can do.
Did he mean to send it to you though? Like he was literally like, was like, hey.
He was like sort of polite. He was not like rude or anything. It was just he was just explaining. I don't care. And I'm like, I care, and now I don't know what.
Sorry.
Because usually what people will do, if they're forced to attend and they really don't think it's valuable, some people just be quiet. They might be in the call, but they're doing other work, or or watching whatever YouTube or whatever they want to do, and it's okay, because I think there's some other problem. Why are people not engaged, or why are you forcing people to do stuff that they don't feel is valuable? But anyway, that specific situation, I was like, great. Afterwards, I don't know what to think about this. It only happened once. Yeah.
At least he wasn't like sending you messages saying, I can't stand your voice. Your voice bothers me. I can't stand you. You're just like, sorry. This is
horrible,
the best response.
I'm crushing your head. Clash. Manuel, where can our listeners and viewers find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. Always happy to answer messages and be in touch. And also our main website is teamtopologies.com. And from there you can find all sorts of free resources. We also have an online academy. And if you're interested in the topic of remote team interactions, besides the workbook, there's now a video-based course from the company called IT Revolution. They published the course where we work through what is in the book, and we also give examples from our experience with different clients and organizations. So
awesome.
teamtopologies.com is probably the first resource.
Very cool. Manuel Pais, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having
so
me.
much.
A lot of fun.
Congratulations on the book. Congratulations on everything. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, and congrats on your podcast. It's great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Talk to you later, man. Peace.
You've been listening to Remotely One. Visit us at remotely1.com/podcast for upcoming episodes. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and download our episodes on your favorite podcast app.
Hey, don't forget to clock out.